Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Ronke and I love to talk about travel, career, and lifestyle content. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the good stuff. In today's video, I'm talking about global entry, TSA PreCheck, NEXUS, all of the possible trusted traveler programs that exist. Trusted traveler programs are literally that. They are programs for trusted travelers, individuals who the US government has determined are low risk and is willing to trust with certain privileges. So these privileges might include expedited entry into the US or expedited exit out of the US. All the programs operate differently. There are, of course, requirements for each program. There's an application process for each program, and there are fees for each program as well. So I'm gonna run through some of the different programs and I'll explain what might make one program a better fit for you. Now, within the US, the majority of these programs are overseen by the US Customs Border and Protection Unit, CBP. Two of the programs that are not overseen by CBP include TSA PreCheck and CLEAR. And I'll talk about CLEAR first. CLEAR is typically used when you are in an airport and you're trying to go through security. So what would happen is that you would show your CLEAR membership ID to a service member at the airport and they would take you through the line. There is, of course, a process for CLEAR, which I'm not gonna go so much into this video, but there will be a link in the description box with more information for the program if you need it. So TSA PreCheck is a program that's also used when you're exiting the US. The important thing to keep in mind with all of these programs, as I've mentioned, is that there is an application process. So just because you apply does not mean you will be accepted. There also is an interview. For TSA PreCheck, it is used strictly within airports, and that is eligible airports. Not every single airport in the US participates in all of these programs, so it is important to do your research on your home airport or the airports that you would fly to the most to understand if these programs are even being used there. If these programs are not being used, I personally might not apply for any of them, but if they are being used, then it is worth applying. TSA PreCheck is typically used when you're departing from a US airport and you're going to another airport, whether it's in the US or outside of the US. As I mentioned, this is of course dependent on if the airport you are flying from participates in the program, and it is also dependent on the airline you are flying with. Most major airlines do participate, but it is important to just keep that in mind. For TSA PreCheck, you would provide what's known as your known traveler number when you are booking your flight, and when you get your ticket, it should say TSA PreCheck on the ticket. You would then go to a separate line where you typically don't take off your shoes and don't have to take out your laptop. The TSA PreCheck line can be shorter, so sometimes it is much faster to go through TSA PreCheck than to go through the regular security line. And for some airports, even if they don't have a specific designated TSA PreCheck line, if you do let one of the custom agents know, they may provide you with a piece of paper or something that lets the other agents know that you have TSA PreCheck, and they may allow you to still keep your shoes on even in a regular line. TSA PreCheck is for departures from US airports, so whether you're going domestic or international, and it costs $85 for a 5-year membership. In order to be eligible, you have to be a US citizen or a lawful permanent resident. Now let's move on to programs that are administered by CBP. The first one I'm going to talk about is Global Entry. Global Entry is $100 for a 5-year period, and Global Entry literally means entry. So when you are coming from outside of the country, this is not used for domestic, but if you're flying internationally into the US from any country, Global Entry allows you to go to a specific line and enter the country. So for Global Entry, when you arrive into the US, instead of filling out a customs form like everyone else would fill out, you would instead just go to a kiosk, make your selections there, and then show your paper and your passport or residency card, whichever one you have, to a customs agent. Global Entry saves so much time, especially in those moments where you're coming on an international, like a huge international flight, and there's other international flights also landing at the same time. If you were to stay in the actual line, you probably could spend 30+ minutes, whereas with Global Entry, sometimes I've been in and out within 2 to 3 minutes. Now with Global Entry, of course, you still would have to wait for your luggage to come out on the regular time, but I find it just easier to sit down and wait for my luggage than to wait a really long time in line, then still have to come out and wait for my luggage. In order to participate in Global Entry, you have to be a US citizen or a lawful permanent resident, and then they actually also allow select nationals from other countries to participate in the Global Entry. Global Entry is not available at all US airports, so please keep that in mind. And with Global Entry, actually, if you apply for Global Entry, you're actually able to also get TSA PreCheck. So as I mentioned, TSA PreCheck is valid for 5 years, and that is $85 versus Global Entry, which is valid for 5 years and is $100. So typically it's advisable to get Global Entry over TSA PreCheck because you get the same benefit and then some for just $15 more. Additionally, with Global Entry, there are some countries that have reciprocal programs whereby if you have global entry, they actually will also allow you to go through some sort of expedited checking in process at their airports. So I know that Canada allows it. I believe Germany allows it. There are some other countries as well that allow it. So it's definitely worth looking into. But this for me is also a great perk of global entry. It's not only limited to solely the US. It may not operate the way that it operates in the US and every other country, but at least you have some options in some countries. Now, people usually think about TSA PreCheck and global entry as the two major programs, but there are a few other programs as well that I'm gonna run through really quick. Another program that's offered by CBP is SENTRI. And SENTRI is used when you are entering the US from Canada or Mexico. For SENTRI, this is air travel and land travel, keeping in mind that the US is of course bordered by Canada on the north and Mexico on the south. So if you are driving through the borders, you can use SENTRI. SENTRI is $122.25. 25 cents is so random, but $122.25. And it may also include TSA PreCheck. So if you know that you travel quite a bit to Mexico and Canada, you don't really travel anywhere else outside the US, getting SENTRI could be worth it as well because it also gives you TSA PreCheck. In order to be eligible for SENTRI, you have to be a US citizen, a permanent resident, or you can be a foreign national. Now the next program is NEXUS, and this is for entry into the US from Canada or into Canada from the US. NEXUS can be used for air travel, for land travel, and for sea travel. NEXUS is actually the cheapest of the programs. It is at $50, but it is very important to keep in mind that in order to apply for NEXUS, you have to do an interview at a specific border crossing station. The border crossing stations are all across the Canada-US border. If you do not live near there or go there at all, I would not advise applying for NEXUS because you probably would spend more going there than you would just paying for one of the other programs. NEXUS also includes TSA PreCheck. So if you have NEXUS, you're able to get the benefits of TSA PreCheck. And on the Canadian side, what that means is essentially you'll have access to expedited exit from Canadian airports when you're flying into the US. NEXUS is available for US citizens, lawful residents, Canadian citizens, lawful Canadian residents, as well as Mexican nationals. And let me just say it again, if you don't live near a Border Patrol office where these interviews would take place, I definitely would not recommend applying for NEXUS just because of how cheap it is. Now, the final program is called FAST. Most people probably won't need this, but it is a program for truck drivers who are traveling between the US, Canada, and Mexico. It is $50. FAST does not include TSA PreCheck, and in order to apply, you would have to be a US citizen, a US lawful resident, Canadian citizen, Canadian permanent resident, or a Mexican national. Another option offered through CBP that is actually free is called mobile entry. Mobile entry works somewhat like global entry in the sense that it's when you're coming into the country, and it also has its own line. So you would fill out this application through an app, and it would list out your information, pretty much everything you would put into like the declaration form, and then you would show it to the customs officer and you'd be on your way as well. Mobile entry is offered through an app, and similar to like the declarations form, you would fill out on the app whatever you would fill out on the form for the whole family and show it to a customs officer. When you do mobile entry, there is usually a separate line for that as well. And I think mobile entry is just as good as global entry, to be honest. The only issue with mobile entry is that it's only offered right now at about 30 US airports. So it definitely does not have as wide a spread as global entry. And once again, because it is a free program, depending on how many people on your flight or how many people in the airport in that moment know about it, the line could be long as well. Out of all the examples that I've mentioned, I've used mobile entry, TSA PreCheck, and global entry, and let me just tell y'all, they're so useful. It is amazing to have TSA PreCheck when you've gotten to the airport a little bit later than you should have, and you look at the regular check-in line, and you know if you stay in that line, you're not gonna make your flight, but then you look at the TSA PreCheck line, and it's empty. That's one of the best feelings in the world because you know you're not gonna miss your flight then. Now, some of you might already start thinking about the numbers, but I do have a few ways for you guys to potentially get these covered for you. The first is through a travel reward card. In one of my earlier videos about travel reward cards, I talked about how some reward cards have a credit for a trusted traveler program. Typically, they'll give you the option between TSA PreCheck and global entry. That's what most cards will cover. There might be a few cards that might cover a few other things, but most will cover global entry or TSA PreCheck. And they'll give you that credit every 5 years to renew your membership while you still have the card. As I've said, if you're choosing between TSA PreCheck and global entry, I would more than likely choose global entry. I know there are some instances where some people have chosen TSA PreCheck because they really needed it and the interview date for TSA PreCheck was closer, but I would rather have global entry and just have everything in one for just $15 extra. Another way to get these paid might be through your job. Some companies do cover this if you travel a lot, or even if you don't travel a lot, it might just be a general benefit that comes with being at your company. So it is worthwhile to ask around and see if others are getting this covered through work. And similarly for the work situation as well, it would also be probably covered every 5 years. I know this was a lot of information about TSA PreCheck, Global Entry, and all these other programs, but it is important to be prepared with this so that you have tips on how to travel better. Let me know down in the comments which one of the programs is your favorite. As always, please make sure to like this video, share with others, and subscribe to my channel for more travel, career, and lifestyle content. See you next time.